can make a game in a day if you make a game that can be made in a day. Yeah,
that's right. So do you still stand by that philosophy, and do you still stand by the philosophy that smaller finished games are just the wisest route for, I guess, for you in particular?
I don't think they're a universal path by any means, and that's part of what enables us to do some larger things right now. It's just, again, looking at what is the shape of this thing, what is the shape that it needs to be, what is the shape we feel comfortable and safe in, and then creating space to also solve problems inside of it. I do believe in the fact that as an industry, we used to make games in 2 to 3 years tops. If you were like 4 years on development cycle, people were like, man, that's a behemoth. And now the definition of behemoth is 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And that's all seen as, because we don't have the monolithic console generation anymore, that's all seen as valid and worthy as long because you aren't missing the boat on the PS2 and on the PS3. It's now just the eternal game generation.
Yep.
And as long as it makes all of the money, you're fine. And I think that some of the things that we're making now, both big and small, just really benefit from, and you can see the difference in, we ship a lot. We refine a lot. We try collaborators new and old, and
let's just get it out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And test the market. Do you ever worry that that's going to hurt your brand, especially now that you're contracted to make other games for like Microsoft and stuff, right? So
yes, well, not so much contracted to make other games, and Microsoft has signed on to be like a first sort of release partner for our next 7 titles.
Okay. So I guess my question is, do you ever worry that if you just release games really quickly, partners won't want to partner with you because they see it as, I don't know the right word, like spastic or impulsive? And by the way, I'm not saying you do that. I'm thinking more about me and my future of like, okay, if I approach games more like Xolivier, am I going to hurt my brand if I'm just releasing games quickly?
I think a real key to making it work is the game has to be good and it has to express something distinct. People will understand if you are copying your own homework and aren't necessarily bringing anything new to the table. Again, we could have done something that was much closer to Organ Trading Sim for a baby trading simulator, but we didn't. We really looked into what this offers that the previous game did not. El Paso 2 is even asking, for a game that was well received and people like the formula and everything, why does it need to exist? Because it needs to have a reason to exist outside of it could make money. So I think that really has helped in general the Strange Scaffold brand to resist some of that danger, because we aren't just pumping out games arbitrarily. Each one does have a vision and is good. And even if it's not something you like as a person, it's interesting. So some of my favorite Steam reviews that we'll get on our projects these days, especially when they go somewhere experimental, like Creepy Red Dinosaur Mansion 3, is like, this isn't typically my genre. I don't know if I love this game, but I do really love what it's doing. I can see that it's doing something. Thumbs up. And that is the way I feel about film and about books and about music. And I think more games deserve to be examined through the lens of not will it kill GTA 6 or will it stand next to Hollow Knight Silksong, but is this a distinct point in my life? And I think that that's a really worthy thing to discuss and think about as we enter this period where, because among other things, we have so much publisher and investor pressure, people are getting forced into tighter and tighter genre definitions. Make something like the Firaxis XCOM, make something like Monster Trainer Slay the Spire. The idea of, our players have a limited amount of time, their world is on fire, and we are competing over the same pieces of their time, the same spaces in the things that they love. It seems like a road to extinction for me. And I think you can see it in sort of the fatigue that our audience can bring to, I call it genre jade, where it's like, oh, the Steam reviews used to be, is this a cool game? now new games that step into that same territory are having players post Steam reviews about their action economy. As soon as you have your audience debating the merits of, but the Overwatch mechanic, it didn't quite hold to the same standard as blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, this is a genre that is, City Builders had that too. This is a genre that has been so mined and so tapped and so refined via Steam tags that now the audience is not evaluating it as a distinct thing in the world. It is evaluating it as a product to meet and exceed highly specific margins. You are not engaging with them artistically even at that point. You are engaging with them as a series of back-of-the-box USP points, and it really shows. It shows in the review score and the reception of those games, and how that audience continues to just go back to the thing they had before. Because among other things, don't even just think about mods and all this other stuff. That is the game that originally sort of claimed that spot in their heart. You're trying to dislodge that. That's a pretty tall order.
Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is that having a unique, very human game, even if it's junk. Not junk, but like, I don't know. I don't want to use the word slop either. But like a highly human, highly creative game that is rough around the edges is a smart business move for a low budget game. By low budget, I mean like less than 500,000. Is that kind of what you're saying? As opposed to in 2008 or 2000, like let's say 2014.
Yeah,
that's when indies were really started, the indie scene started to really blow up.
It's the more modern
back then. Yeah. Like back then, it was about polish and it was about hitting your genre tropes. But now it's different. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I don't think it's different. I think that because the market is so wide, you can choose your class and your build, and you need to hone in on that like you would in a game like Diablo. It's the difference between dealing millions of damage per second or thousands, is how much you've drilled down into your build and your spec. So some studios did and still do really drill it down into polish, and they make that their hallmark, and that works for them because they have built everything, including sort of their audience expectations, around that. Strange Scaffold, what we've built our audience expectations around is, will it be interesting? Will it come from this unified creative voice? Is it worth playing? Because among other things, you don't know quite what you'll experience. That's what we've spec'd our build to accomplish. So we end up getting evaluated through that lens. And I think this is another part of where the very expansionist mindset that had set in during the 2020s ended up throwing a lot of studios off, is because they had a build and a spec towards accomplishing certain things and towards priming their audience and the press for certain things, and then they swerve into a different spec entirely with the same studio without basically a comprehensive rework of how they did things, and it led to a lot of live service games dying, among other things, because the team wasn't built for that, and the way the audience was primed was not built for that. It was just sort of dropped in the middle of an environment that would not grow it. So yeah, I think it can be a smart business strategy, and I think that small, interesting, distinct novel that is valid if you put in all the pieces to make that work, and if you don't, that is, I think, one of the greatest dangers for a game. That's why we're being very careful, again, around El Paso 2, because the 2 moniker and the fact that we're now starting to make sequels to our work and follow-ups and spiritual successors to things that we've done before, that has very specific connotations and what games people associate with it. So we're being really careful in saying El Paso 2 is happening because we found a version that fits our scale. We are taking something at the same budget, if not a little smaller, and because we have an entire first game already built, we are able to use that budget to go interesting, wild places we couldn't before inside of the same package, inside of the same aesthetic. So El Paso 2 is not bigger, better, AA, AAA. It is, I mean, it's a PS2 style sequel where, okay, now they have the tech base and the rest of their stuff locked down. They get to do some pretty wild stuff inside of that same skin.
Yeah. When you say spec, what do you mean?
Remind me of I'm baby brained. We're 5 months in, so please remind me of in what context I said spec.
You said it's important to stick to the same spec, or like it was in context to the audience and expectations, I think.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot about ARPGs and that player base recently.
Yeah.
And they talk about their specialization or their spec, the way in which they create their build.
Okay, so can we change this last, let's say 10, because I'm trying to fully understand. Sometimes when I'm talking to you, I feel like I'm talking to like kind of like an Elon Musk kind of thing, or John Blow. No, but hold on. But John Blow is the same way. When I'm talking to John Blow, I'm like trying, and I'm just gonna confidently say I think the audience with John Blow might feel that way too, where it's like it feels really good what they're hearing, but they don't fully grasp it. And so I want to take what you just said in the last 10 minutes. Can we try and repackage that as advice that you would give to, let's say, do you have a son or a daughter? You just had a kid, right?
We're not talking too much about personally identifying details of kiddo, but
okay, gotcha. So let's say you had a son. If you were going to get your son to become a game developer, and you wanted to take the last 10 minutes and turn it into advice for him starting his studio, what would the advice be? Because I'm trying to figure out, like, how does this, like, the application.
I do this type of thing a lot, so it's not the most difficult thing. The way I would turn this into application is I would say, son, you're making a hell of a choice deciding to go into game development, especially now that robots built by Boston Dynamics walk the earth with machine guns, and they're hunting us in our little hovels. But there is still a market and an audience for your work.
Yeah.
If you're going to go into game development, you need to calibrate everything from how you position your studio to how you talk to your players to how you talk to the press to the process used for your game to emerge from a place that is consistent and that makes the most sense for what you want to be building. So if you want to build small, distinct games, you do not talk about them as if they're going to be genre-defining epics. And if you're trying to make genre-defining epics, you do not take a deal to get out your game in a year and a half, because that, at minimum, let's say the project isn't compromised. Let's say you get out a version of it. You're going to be unhappy because you shoved a genre-defining epic into a year and a half, and that just doesn't work.
Right.
Not in most cases. So really focusing on your strengths, the life you want to lead, and how you want to keep making projects in the future is a good way of keeping your sanity and having a sustainable business, despite the Boston Dynamics machines walking the earth.
Is specialization a universal? Is specialization something that game developers should universally pursue? And I guess when you say let's define specialization. It's essentially a brand, right? It's a brand that makes you happy in your life, that you identify with, and it's also a brand for your games. Meaning, like Strange Scaffold, your games are pretty much always strange or really unique. Like that's the big brand for your studio. Is that number one? Is that what specialization is when you say spec?
I think specialization can be reduced down to brand. I think you can say, like, here's the brand, which extends not just to how it's projected, because brand to me is a publicity thing, but it's also how it's made. If you're going to build really polish heavy indie games, even sort of how you talk about that polish when you show the game. Your brand says, hey, this person comes out with a game every 6 years that will blow your mind. You should probably not subvert that midway through or reveal your tiny experiment game and not think it will be evaluated by the same standards, right?
Yep.
So can you not pursue specialization? Absolutely. Does the momentum of your studio and of the wider market and player base end up bringing you that way? That's also absolutely that's the case. It's this is actually something that some really wise game devs gave me advice on as far as team size, which was like, especially when I was earlier in my career, they were talking about, okay, if you're going to be running a game studio, we need to realize that there are basically points of scale where things, first of all, the company always wants to grow. There is, even just under a capitalist system, a momentum to business that is very like, give a mouse a cookie. I'm also baby book brained. So you install you install your first pieces of infrastructure, and you can see this other opportunity if you just install a little more. So you install a little more infrastructure, you spin up your team a little bit more, that has a hunger, and you hit an equalization point. Then if you want to go a little further, that has an inherent weight and an inherent set of needs that pushes you to the next equalization point. And so this is part of why you don't typically see like let me think of a really good number, but it's really hard to maintain a studio of like 13 people, 11 people. You're probably moving up towards like 15. There's a point at which you have like roughly 8 people, and then beyond that, it's hard to keep that nucleus together unless you build in all these pieces that end up bringing you closer to 15 people. There is a momentum to projects and to sort of the processes that developers initiate. If you're going to have a publisher, the things that come with working with a publisher, as you've experienced as well, will lead you down a series of optimal paths. Those optimal paths tend to look pretty similar because they're optimizing for the same results and for the same people who are approaching things in similar ways. And coming into that eyes wide open is at least a good call for keeping your own sanity in the midst of the nonsense and whiplash that can occur there.
Right. Okay, so what I don't want people listening right now to think that they need to choose a brand and choose a specialty for their games and stick with that for a decade. My opinion is that would be a bad idea because you don't know what your specialty or your brand is until you make a ton of mistakes, right? So I guess I want to caveat that, and my question is, do you agree with that?
Yes, I would caveat that. I would say it's very much worth exploring and figuring out how you create spaces to explore. This is why game development is also business, is also your positioning with press and social media and players and community management. It's because all of these play a piece in a holistic game creating lifestyle. So you don't need to just look at I don't know, Hideo Kojima or a Jonathan Blow or as Oliver Nelson Jr. and then say, that's the path, I'm just going to do that arbitrarily. Ideally, as much as possible, you're creating spaces for you to learn what you want to be building and how you want to be building it, because that's the opposite is equally as dangerous, where you just choose a route and you go down it, and even if you're successful, you're maybe not creating the thing that you were built to do and that you feel optimally that you feel is like very much within possibility for you, that is the way you'd like to create. You're just stuck in that specialization still. You can even shift specialization over time if you are established as a creator. Like, I think there is there is and have been paths for Strange Scaffold to do that. There was times we pursued it, and just like the right pieces didn't all come together. And thank God, because I think I'm in a happier place now.
Yeah.
So, but if we had set the tent poles to start working towards that in every piece of our brand and our game creating process, yeah, it would have been possible. It's just, do we want it? And have we given ourselves enough space to safely learn whether or not we want it?
Okay, so that's great advice. I want to shift gears here and talk about something that has been on my mind for the last week of what I wanted to talk to you about. I kind of want to give you like a series of shotgun questions, so you don't have to expound on each one.
Sure.
Last time we talked, I still couldn't figure out what your business model was. But like, here, a couple shotgun questions for you to try and grasp and understand your business model. Do you work remote with your team? Is your team remote?
Team is completely remote.
Okay, so there's no studio like in Vancouver or whatever. It's all remote is it across the world?
It is across the world at this point.
Okay. Are they full-time employees or are they contractors?
Everyone is a contractor. Everyone is part-time, including me.
Okay. However, you're the owner of Strange Scaffold, so you're the contractor, and then you sub out, kind of like a builder would building a house.
Yes.
Okay. So what is the difference between let me think here. And are any of the subs or the contractors you're hiring, are they part-time or are they full-time?
Everyone is part-time, so we very rarely are working with, I'll say this, consistently. The goal is that everyone is at 20 hours or less, and when we go over that is to fulfill a very specific need, and it is our definition of what crunch is. It's like, okay, we went from 15 hours or 20 hours a week, we're now looking at something closer to 30 to hit a goal, or because something fell behind, we're going to keep that limited, we're going to keep that focused and look for the path that, among other things, involves even changing the game to end that sooner than later.
Okay, and are you acting as the project lead for all of these projects, or are you the art director? Are you, like, what are you?
I'm project lead, I'm art director, I'm creative director and design director. I'm wearing a bunch of hats and still participating a lot in the day-to-day.
Okay, cool. The reason I ask all these questions is I think of you very similar to, like, I'm working with a builder right now to build a house, okay? And it's just him, and he just subs out to incredible contractors, and he gets good prices. And the reason he's able to do it is because he's been in the industry for so long. And he just knows these sort of mom and pop subs that are just like rock solid, honest people.
And they probably do very specific things, right? Very
specialized. It's like there is the tile guy that does the best tile, and he does it at a great price, and you can trust him. He's slow, but he gets it done, right? And you can trust him. And so I've asked this question over and over and over for like 2 years on the podcast. I'm trying to figure out, like, what is the difference between making whether it's an independent game or a AA game. In this day and age, you can build a game kind of like a contractor would build a house, where you just have your subs and they build the game in the right order. Like you don't build certain aspects of a game until you have built another aspect of the game, right? You don't set dress until you've gray boxed, generally. And a builder understands this. A builder of a house knows you don't lay the carpet before you paint the walls, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people listening right now, they don't know the right order to do things. And so to ask them to sub out the job is going to be 3-4 times as expensive as it would be for you, because you know the process and how to do it. I guess my question is, do you agree with that comparison to something like building a house and doing things in the right order and knowing the right subs?
Yes, I work with people more consistently than your builder does. So I'll typically have the same lead programmer on a project from beginning to end.
Gotcha.
Unless things go disastrously. But I do think, and I've talked to people who are like, I tried doing what you did And one, it drove me crazy, or two, I nearly everything went really, really bad. And I think part of that is, I mean, I had worked on over 40 games before I started my studio. I'm now at over 110. I've gotten to see so many things. I get to, as a creative director, steer our ship around so many invisible pitfalls and additional rabbit holes because I've seen them. And I guess one of my specialties is being able to project out, okay, if we do this, here's the three things that that go into it. I have an acronym even at this point called DID IT, which is the first one is direction, impact, dependencies, iteration, time. So any and this is part of like a book I'm noodling on these days, where I'm like, okay, if we're going to talk about game production, it's not the same as film, where you can just sort of lay out a blueprint and it can get arbitrarily built, and you can absolutely determine to the point of to the point of a single cent.
That's right.
What a film is going to cost, because all these things are known and the processes are known. But you can look at all the things attached to something and evaluate whether or not it fits the wider direction of the project, whether it will make a sufficient impact, whether it has dependencies and what those dependencies involve, including time for iteration, and then just sort of the pure time to make the first version of a thing. And that, again, gives us a significant advantage in doing what we do.
And this acronym is... Go ahead, I'm so sorry.
The acronym is DID IT, D-I-D-I-T.
Okay. And can we... So is this... You use this acronym throughout the production process, or is this like pre-production when you have a game idea and you're trying to weigh whether it's going to be worth your time and money?
Oh, it's throughout the entire thing, because problems come up and opportunities come up, or if someone just has a cool idea and my head just kind of runs through that algorithm of like, okay, procedural generation for our levels. Here's all the things that are attached to that. Does it fit? And this is why we don't have procedural generation in a lot of our games, because I know from experience that when you build a procedural generated level system, it is not a one-time cost. You are maintaining those procedural level systems for the rest of development, refining them, going back to them, fixing them. And so what looks like, oh, we get infinite levels if we just put in procedural generation, is actually this, especially depending on your scope and your genre and whether you're 2D or 3D, this bear of a thing that requires increasing refinement over time. Or you can just make a level and figure out how to make a good level and make more of those. And for our processes, bespoke levels went out. And sometimes the team members are a little frustrated by like, well, why can't we at least explore it? And I'm like, we have a game to ship in 12 months. It will take us 2 months. This is actually what happened on Co-op Kaiju Horror Cooking. I'm really proud of that project. It did have some real trouble through the development process, and I think it has come out a flawed gem. I think its versus mode that was produced in its first launch content cycle is among the coolest and best things we produced, but it did so quietly because the game didn't really catch on. And the first 2 months of development were consumed with people saying, let's do procedural, let's do procedural, let's do procedural. I knew all of these factors, but went like, okay, get it out of your system. At the end of 2 months, we had a system that didn't work great, that would need to be maintained and refined for the rest of the development cycle. And that was 2 critical months, a sixth of our 12-month development time.
Yep.
It's like, okay, we're now behind 2 months on something that doesn't fit. We were able to make that up in other ways later, but yeah, like to go all the way back to what you said about Baldurs, it is not impossible for people to replicate what I do, but it is more difficult the less they have shipped before.
Correct.
And the less they have had first-hand experience, or at least significant research into all the things involved with what they want to do.
Yep. And I ask this all for my own personal benefit. I kind of treat this call like a free consulting call for me, In exchange, I'll give you some YouTube exposure.
Heck
But,
yeah,
like-
I love that exposure.
And links are in the description, by the way, for Zolivir's. What are we gonna do here? What's the game that we want people? Oh, Baby Training Sim.
Yeah,
Is that it?
That's the
All right.
one.
All right, links in the description, guys. Check it out. But yeah, like I ask all these questions for my benefit because I envy. I shouldn't, because grass is always greener. But like, some of my friends are like builders or like contractors, and I've been fascinated by the builder who's building my house, because I'm like, this process is so precise. Like, you know exactly, he knows exactly the price of my house, which is not true for most builders. Most builders will give you a quote and then you'll blow the budget, right?
Yeah, that's wild.
And it's just him. And so I've looked at him and I'm like, what if, and I've looked at you and I'm like, what if with the right level of experience of shipping games, because I'm about to ship my 3rd commercial release. What if with this decade of experience of shipping games, all of a sudden it clicks and the process of making a game can become systematic and properly scheduled, and I'm not laying the carpet before I paint the walls. Now obviously you've got to iterate, right? You've got to test the game and you realize, okay, this isn't working. But surely eventually you get to a point where, and this is my next question for you, can game developers get to a point where making a game is not really a gamble anymore?
I think you can. I'd say that we're really substantially there. We would have to dramatically, we'd have to be working in a dramatically different way on something in order to, and at a dramatically different scale for these to be new questions and unexplored territory. Because among other things, the projects that I choose and the way that I think about even ideating a project is all coming from this shared foundation of things I want to make consistent. That's why the studio is called Strange Scaffold, is I want to make weird things reasonably. I think that's a great call out for what Space World Baby Training Simulator represents. Is there is a version of that game, especially with some of the challenges we experienced during development. We had to do 2 major design pivots in the middle of, I think it was 7 months of total development time, which is not a lot of time to make a game or to pivot it, frankly. But the core process and philosophy, and a lot of team members who I've worked with before, so they also are already keyed in on how we make games and on what they bring to that process. It really was able to still be brought into being, and a game which my mom tried to convince me for quite a long time we should not make. That game becomes a reasonable bet when placed in the right context. I was talking to some, I was in a BAFTA breakthrough program. One of the nice things about the BAFTA breakthrough is that they give you essentially a golden phone, where it's like, hey, put in this spreadsheet the lists of people you want to talk to, and we will, with all of the legitimacy of the BAFTA organization, try to track them down and make it to where you can talk to them. And so I've been speaking to a lot of more business-minded executives, a lot of people who have been in the industry for a really long time, to confirm suspicions I had and to gather context on how decisions get made. And this is one of the things where what I was learning and what I was excited to learn is there's a world where you're making a $150 million game, and it makes total sense. All of those numbers line up. You have the machine built for it. If those pieces are in place, that's actually a reasonable bet. The problem is when that is not approached intentionally, and when, among other things, the $150 game, $150 million game becomes a $300 or $400 million game.
Yep.
When the reasonable gamble starts happening in an imprecise environment, and that's where, at this point, if offered the opportunity to massively expand,
That looks so much better.
I wouldn't take it with Strange Scaffold, because the machine lets us create weird things in very reasonable contexts, which fits the life I want to lead and the amount of time I want to spend with my kid as a stay-at-home dad, being able to, in the middle of the day, mid-meeting, change a diaper. So grabbing at a clear, obscure-sized game we're talking about like 20, 30 million, does not hold the appeal, because I know the consequences. We're suddenly driving a very different machine, and we can get crushed by it in the process.
That makes complete sense. So to wrap up that segment, the advice would be, okay, I'll say what I think, what my advice would be. It would be something like, release a lot of games as a developer and figure out and take note of the structure and the production cycle, like what steps occurred when, and what was most effective, what steps were most effective for you personally. Because I think every studio or every indie game developer, whether they're solo or they're a big studio, their process is going to be very, very different from one another. So for example, for my studio, everybody could tell me all day long that I need to gray box first, but it doesn't work for me. I have to set dress while I'm making the game, because the game is all about the vibes and the mood and the story. Like, that's my specialty, right? My specialty is vibes, mood, story all day long. And so sometimes for me in my studio, most of the time, what I have to do is, and even if I'm working with a sub, I have to set dress. Generally, I have to set dress while I'm making the game to feel it out, because oftentimes the gray box isn't what's going to make the level fun. It's the vibes and the mood. So I'm not necessarily arguing or making a statement as to whether gray boxing is important. What I'm saying is,
it doesn't work for you.
It doesn't work for me. And I've learned that through 10 years of releasing games. So I guess my question to you is that really the only way, or one of the primary ways, for a game developer to get to a point where they're no longer gambling away their time and their life savings? It's just releasing games and figuring out their process.
I think I think it doesn't even necessarily have to be releasing games, although releasing games is really critical. I would say working on games. So the Game Jam project, or the half-finished Unity repository, probably not going to teach you all that much, actually, about how, because the difference between doing rehearsals and like opening night, you treat it in a totally different way.
So true.
Your brain operates in a totally different way. So releasing games and working on games is a big part of it. I do think pre-production and a lot of self-examination is a huge part of it. A lot of really reckoning. The thing about Did It is I can do it in a very brutally short set point of time, like a few seconds at this point, because it's how I've lived my life. It's very slow at first for other people, but it gets quicker the more you exercise that muscle. I do think that if you were to use that lens to talk through aesthetic choices, features, even sort of narrative delivery methods in your game, you can still reach similar points with just a lot of proactive consideration and reckoning. Yeah, it's but it's a matter of, do you want to build in that way, or would you like to accept, flying by the seat of your pants with everything that comes with it? Yeah. There's a lot of people who would rather just start some flying, and I respect that too, and I hope that you survive to keep flying. Because you can also, plan yourself all day and have the perfect little GDD all set up, but that doesn't guarantee a game or a great game out of that either.
Yeah. Okay, so the next big question I have for you is, how many projects do you have currently going right now? It's, in a way, it's kind of like asking a builder, and honestly, this might sound like a dumb question or a dumb statement, but when I talk to game developers, they're usually just working on one project.
Yep.
And it sounds like, and I keep coming back to the builder metaphor, I see you as a builder, where it's like a builder will have 6 houses they're building throughout the year. Is that true for you?
And each of those houses informs how you build other houses. We've adjusted some projects mid-flight because we learned something critical on another project, and we go, okay, we cannot replicate this again. Or this is what happens when you use this Unity package in your project. A lot of people discover those hurdles at the end, and then they just have to hope they're making both a game that they can benefit from that information, and that they can start it quickly enough to benefit from that knowledge. we get to mid-flight simultaneously learn at high speed and distribute that knowledge across not just projects and teams, but all those individuals get to also scuttle off and take that knowledge to their stuff across the wider industry. And that's one of my favorite parts about Strange Scaffold, is we get to have a distributed impact.
So how many projects are you currently working on?
3.5.
And there's other stuff in the pipeline, meaning you've signed contracts for future projects.
Yes, because we know exactly how we're going to proceed on those, and we're going to solve problems along the way to make it shippable in time.
Okay, so let's talk about the business strategy here and the wisdom behind working on 3.5 projects. There's a book called, I don't know if I mentioned it in our previous podcast, but I've mentioned it several times. There's a book called 10x is better than 2x. Have you heard of this book?
I have not.
Okay, it's about focusing on one big thing and shooting for the moon and going all in on one thing, because there's a higher probability of that one thing working if you go all in. So the more you go all in, the higher the probability of it working is, especially when you detach from all of the other things that you're trying to use to secure yourself. So for example, for me, I could, if I wanted to, I could stop doing YouTube altogether, and I could use my life savings that me and my wife are building through 10 years of making games. I could use all that, burn through all that, and make one big game, right? Yep. And because I don't have the dependency of YouTube anymore, and because I'm no longer doing this podcast or taking sponsorships, I have all the time I need to focus on this one thing. And that one thing, I'm going to have a higher probability of being successful with it because I am focused on it. That's the philosophy of the book, is that going all in is actually not an unwise thing to do. It's a wise thing to do.
That's the philosophy of a lot of the game development industry as well.
Right. And so what's your thoughts on that? And why do you feel like that's problematic if you do?
Well, I think that the book and the strategy it describes, having not read it, one of the reasons that that's problematic is just quite simply, okay, and what if not, and what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't 10x? There's some industries where you can have more reasonably expect a 10x. More consistent manufacturing fields, for example. But entertainment has always been a gamble. It's always been a degree of uncertainty. Even in the film world, where they have a lot of people doing focus groups and analytics, and they still get surprised by opening weekend pretty regularly. So the problematic bit is not that, hey, you can with focus build an incredibly special thing. One, not everyone works that way. If I had to just work on one game at a time, I would go crazy. I knew that before I started Strange Scaffold, so I didn't try to do that from the beginning.
And you would be less creative, potentially.
Potentially less creative because I'm just thinking in a single box. This is a very stupid example, but my Spotify playlist, whenever I'm going to start working, I hit shuffle on my just liked songs list, and it's thousands of songs from every different genre. So I'll be in the middle of writing, and it goes right from Mitski singing about I Bet on Losing Dogs to Smash Mouth's All Star to like a Chopin piano piece.
Yeah, that's great.
And that keeps me from, sometimes I do need to lock in on a vibe, but other times it keeps me operating in a wider conceptual space that I believe helps me be more creative. So yeah, point number one, not everyone's brain works that way. And two, okay, if it doesn't 10x, do you have a safety net? And most people don't, or at least that safety net is fraught and keeps them from trying again to achieve their dreams. So I think that like an overall lesson from it is very much in the vein of intentional pursuit of a focused goal. But what that looks like doesn't have to be literally one project. In our case, we have done a 10x strategy on multiple games. My focus is the portfolio, and that's part of why now, as far as our business strategy and sales, we have games that we released years ago that didn't do super well, and they're outperforming their launch days on regular bases because the strategy I had coming into Strange Scaffold that I really didn't find a lot of support in outside of folks like Xbox and Faisal Sethi over at Frosty Pop. who's our collaborator and funding partner on a lot of these upcoming games that we're doing, is I don't want to sell people one game. I want to sell them 5. I want them to be able to follow Strange Scaffold the way they would their favorite director or musician. And people looked at me just with like a blank face, not really understanding what that means in a industry built on 10x results. And yeah, what that means is, as time goes on, people do have bought into my creative voice and into the work of my collaborators and what we're bringing to the table, and we are selling 5 games, 10 games regularly, and getting people to have cross-pollination in genres that don't fit within their interests.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm told, is unheard of and not safe to bet on. But like, I mean, if I like a musician, I'll try their prog jazz album for like at least a couple songs, and we've gotten to see that pay off. And that means that our back catalog sells and sells better over time. And every game we release ends up being marketing costs for the rest of our projects. Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator is doing better. Weirdly enough, games like Life Eater do better because off of a release like I Am Your Beast, because people are looking at everything else we've done. They're looking at the perspective, looking at the philosophy, and that was the 10x focus strategy for our studio. It didn't look like one; it looked like, you know, a bunch to create that garden of interesting games.
So you've created a brand, and that brand is one of the mechanisms of the brand an audience on social media and like an email list, or does the brand work outside of that ecosystem and it's people just know Strange Scaffold on Steam?
Both, all of the above.
Okay.
Or this is the funniest one. We have people on TikTok and other things being surprised that Space Warlord Baby Trading Simulator is made by the same people as Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator. They go like, "Oh, you
names
made
games
that
like
too?"
Really? They don't know?
It's a pretty frequent reaction.
Wow.
But what that does is give us more opportunities to sell both games and to say,
Yeah.
"Did you know we also made unrelated game and unrelated genre?" And they're like, "Oh, I'll check that out." And that we talk a lot about the difficulty of curation in an algorithmic world with so much content, and being a built-in curator of your own work. Here's all the things filtered through me, filtered through this collaboration or this set of people. That's a force multiplier in this time, especially.
So I'll end with this question for my own benefit. Again, my plan for my career has always been to be not for my YouTube brand. Like, my YouTube brand is totally different than my game studio. In the sense, well, it's not totally different. It just, one of them is about podcasts and training material, and the other one is about artful games. My plan for my game studio is to be the Tim Burton / Del Toro. I don't know if you've seen Frankenstein. It's incredible.
Sure have.
It's amazing. That is my goal for my games, is to be the atmospheric horror, arty, moody, emo games, and that's it. You know, story driven, and I don't branch outside of that. If you look at my previous games, they've got that flair. My third game, same sort of flair. It's just 3D. What do you think about that strategy, and is that in line with what you're talking about?
I think it's valid and worthwhile. I think the primary obstacle is just having enough games to sort of create that tonal territory. So to use the Tim Burton example, we know him as Tim Burton because in a pretty short stretch of time, he did Beetlejuice, Batman, Edward Scissorhands, Batman Returns, Ed Wood.
Yep. Good job, by the way. Way to go.
I mean, I'm a Wikipedia ninja at this point.
That's great.
Looking at Tim Burton's filmography, That's that's an incredibly precise zone for funders knowing what they're getting into and wanting to get more of that. Audience to know what even a produced by Tim Burton label means. Jordan Peele has done the same in the modern day with people going to watch films that he's produced, although there's been some really interesting chatter about his success in producing films or being an executive producer on films that carry forward creative instincts that he has had versus other people like Steven Spielberg. The difference when he executive produces and
Yes.
People having a debate about Jordan Peele's company not doing it as effectively as others. There's some interesting chatter happening there. But the long and short of it is, at least in the modern day, off of more than one movie, Jordan Peele establishes a voice and people follow it. I think the primary obstacle to you being the Tim Burton of games is very simply like, have people been able to have enough of your voice in as short of an amount of time to say, if I want to play a game that has a Tim Burton vibe, it's got to be Thomas Brush. And there's gonna be another one on the way this year. I think that is.
So it's frequency. The issue is frequency.
I think frequency, consistency of quality, and yeah, I think frequency and consistency of quality is gonna be really.
And it's hard to have consistency of quality if you're too frequent.
That too. Yeah.
That's good, man. And that's that. When I ask that question, it's not. I'm not asking that for outside of what I want my audience to know. I want everyone listening right now to go, okay, who do I want to be personally? Like, do I want my games to have a like almost like a directed by flair, or is it just brand? Is it just, and they're very similar, right? You can have like a directed by game that is, this is a Thomas Brush game, and that's kind of where I'm aiming. And I don't know if you know Justin Burnham. I'm pretty sure you know Justin Burnham at 3D Realms. I've been talking to him, and he's been encouraging me like lean into the Thomas Brush thing, because all of my stories have that same vibe and flair.
Bennett Foddy did a lot, I think, to encourage people to put their names on their games with talk by with that GDC talk by that name. I've seen that chatter going way more.
Wouldn't you say it's? Wouldn't you? And he absolutely. And wouldn't you say that is? It's I guess just a more surgical or hyper focused version of a brand. Like it's the same thing. It's just it's a name.
I think it's useful. One of the things that we've been intentionally pursuing in our strategy is to have a name as well, but try to consciously put more names in people's ambient headspace. Mm-hmm. So we talk about folks like Dan Pierce, frequent collaborator, Tom Vanita, Candice Udert, who's our studio producer now, and just really start to get people familiar with this wider constellation of people, because among other things, I'll tell you, part of my business strategy is, if the studio goes down, I want people to look at the work of my collaborators and support them so that I can still have a job, maybe, on
That's right.
On their stuff. So I'm really excited about the idea of people knowing more game developer names in general, and in a way that we in the medium have not had a lot of opportunity getting to fall in love with and identify their fingerprints, because I think that will make the experience of playing more games richer, in the same way that if you know Roger Deakins has been the cinematographer on a thing, you get to see his fingerprint, and it gives something more life than it would be otherwise. It gives a flawed thing a reason to still go to it, because it's like, but Roger Deakins was there. That means something. I think in development, we have not had, and this is an intentional move by a lot of different companies over the years, right? But we have not had the opportunity for a development team to mean something. We think of BioWare, we don't think of more than a few names from BioWare, despite how much this creator or that creator
Yep.
made sure Mass Effect and Dragon Age is what it is. So Strange Scaffold is trying to do this authorship thing in a way that also spreads that spotlight and creates this web of people that you like. Julia Minamata, who did the Crimson Diamond and brought her pixel work not just to Space Warlord Baby Training Simulator, but also to Witch Strandings and Recommendation Dog, and now Baby Training Sim. This is a path to people loving games more. And I think this is where, when we talk about time, the reason why pure frequency, because people in a generative AI world are like, okay, I can make games super fast. Pure frequency does not give people the tools to fall more in love with their games. And so whatever path you follow, if you want to be successful in it, you need to create a path for people to fall more in love with your games, and ideally with the games of the wider medium, so that they keep coming back and that their lives are benefited, because pure output or even pure cash flow is an incredibly brittle thing, we have learned. But people giving about what you do is not.
Man, that is a good sentence to end on, man. That was really good. Okay, I've learned a ton. Link in the description for Baby Trading Sim. Yeah?
Link in the description, and thank you so much for having me. This is always some of my most fun conversations in games, so I appreciate coming on back.
Yeah, man, no problem. Yeah, same to you. It's always fun talking to you. All right, I'll let you go, buddy. Get you back to work.
All right, thank you. Take care, and talk soon.
Yep, cheers. And by the way, did you know you don't have to wait until you're done with your game 3 years later after developing it to know if it's going to make some money? You can actually take a demo or a prototype of your game and you can sell it right now to publishers, investors, or on something like Kickstarter. It's possible to go full-time indie with just an idea, with a demo, and I want to show you how to do it. I've actually done this 3 separate times. So I made a free workshop for you below. You're gonna learn how to take an idea and pitch it and get some funding for it and actually go full-time before you even finish your game. It's a really awesome workshop. Click the link below. It's my treat for you. what is the #1 industry?
Graphics other than the regular ones here. Okay, this stuff, have to remember them. So I'll put that. Okay. Those are advanced, and those we're going to be covering. Not like the HUD, like the text on the HUD and stuff like that are these things. We're going to be covering those later. Projectiles. You do not need to worry about projectiles. Just know that it's there and be done with it. Battler settings. Again, I would suggest leaving this 100% intact. The only things you might want to change is the keys if you want, which are these things right here. You could change those. You could change the SE and stuff like that, but beyond that, I don't suggest changing anything else. These are the text that you would actually changes are these things. Yeah, let me move the X actually. That would be more visible. So let's say I move this to 20 and then I move this to 20. But basically the thing that you need to take out of that is they move at the same time. When you see the HP and the MP and the TP, they're all moved at the same time, and instead of it moving individually. Now if you want to move them individually, then you will have to come down here where the X and Y is. Let's go ahead and show you an example. Let's make this 25 and then go back out, and the HP I believe should be different. I moved it Y-wards, so it moved down a little bit, so as you can see, yeah, let me move the X actually. That would be more visible. And I forgot what this was. 25. What was it before? Damn it. Move this to 12. 8, 12, 8, 12, 8, 12. Easy for me to remember. Yes. And as you can see, the HP moved over to the right and the MP stayed at the same place. So this moves the whole thing as a whole, and these ones move it individually. Keep that in mind. And then the TP, if you want to move it individually as well. Color definition is when you don't use like your own custom graphics, then you could use a graphic generated by the game itself. So this will be the color stuff that you generate, but we're using our own graphics, which I suggest you do too. And that, so basically just look over this whole menu and look at the different informations. Like this whole section has to do with the location of the life bars and stuff like that. But if you actually want to edit the text and stuff like that, you will have to go into the kernel and come down over somewhere over here. So yeah, it's kind of complicated like that, but I'm gonna go over that. The per item pop-up, again, it's an add-on, not really required. Just go through this, change the position over your character's head or object or whatever, and then the sounds that you want to play, and then the gold icon for when you get gold. Per anti-lag, you don't have to touch this one, but you could if you want, and change the out range. And the Fnatic ABS, again, you do not have to touch this. And yeah, that's it for this episode. So in this episode, we covered the settings in the per ABS script itself. Next episode, I'm going to be showing you guys how to set up enemies, because that's easier than setting up whispers and stuff like that. So I'm going to try to go from easy to hard stuff. So again, peace. Thank you guys again for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to be updated every time I release a new video. Make sure to like this video, and if you have any questions or would like to share your thoughts, please leave your comments down below to let me know. Once again, thank you.
Make sure. Okay, so this.
you.